Welcome in this session named Simplify Your API Strategy with Istio. My name is Nicolas Massé, and I'm working as a technical marketing manager at Red Hat in the middleware BU. I will give you some insight on the positioning of API management and service mesh, tell you which technology is best for which usage, and give you the big picture of how everything fits together. I bet you came to this session for Istio, which is one of the hottest technologies this year. Given the current hype around service mesh, it's tempting to use Istio for everything. Istio might be a nice tool that solves real customer problems, but so far, it's not solving every single problem. Let's take a step back and analyze the positioning of Istio in regards to other existing technologies. If we have a look at trends at work in IT, switch to microservices is a very deep one. In a nutshell, it's exploding the big monolith into multiple smaller software components that are responsible for a single bounded context. Those software components communicate through APIs. With that explosion comes new challenges, cloud native development being one of them. The whole point about cloud native is to run scalable applications in a resilient, dynamic environment, be it public or private. And at the same time, be able to roll out new versions very easily at a minimal cost. What a loaded agenda. Istio helps solve those challenges by bringing four key added values. Traffic management, which is being able to wire microservices at runtime dynamically using blue-green deployment and canary testing. Observability, which is being able to see what's happening with rich automatic tracing, monitoring, and logging of all your services. Service identity and security, which is being able to automatically secure services through managed authentication, authorization, and encryption of communications between services. Policy enforcement, which is being able to apply policies and ensure that they are enforced and that resources are fairly distributed among consumers. In the end, the goal of technology is to enable developers to focus on business, on writing business logic and ignore some common requirements they would encounter in a distributed system. By wiring software components at runtime, dynamically, the administrator can implement advanced development techniques such as blue-green or canary deployments. The reliability of the overall application can be asserted by using fault injection or delays. The application reliability can be improved using the circuit breaker pattern. By having a proper description of every component in Kubernetes and of every communication in Istio, any administrator can jump in a project and immediately discover the application architecture. By having all logs, traces, and performance metrics gathered from all software components, the administrator can discover the inner working of a running application. All the software components of an application can talk to each other securely, thanks to security by default. No change are needed for the application code and infrastructure. Defense in depth. Integrate with existing security systems to provide multiple layers of defense. Zero Trust Network. Build security solutions on untrusted networks. By having policies defined and applied dynamically, the administrator can modify the application security and reliability at runtime. By itself, Istio does not seem to solve all the problems, especially we have not yet talked about APIs. API management is about three main topics. Visibility, to help you take better decisions by gaining visibility on API usage. Most used methods, top consuming applications, API health, and so on. Control, to reduce risks by applying finer control on API consumers, consuming application authorization, quotas, SLAs, and so on. Monetization, to drive new revenues through a per-usage pricing model. API analytics from Freescale lets you analyze your API traffic by account, application, or service, and much more. You will be able to define and present tailored metrics, drill down up to the API method level, implement business metrics, or export data in a CSV format. Application plans allow you to set rate limits for API usage and control traffic flow for a group of developers. You can set per period limits for incoming API calls to protect your infrastructure and keep traffic flowing smoothly. You can automatically trigger overage alert for applications that reach or exceed rate limits and define behavior for over-limit applications. The Freescale API management solution lets you implement monetization by providing one-stop shop for monetization, customizable billing metrics with setup fees, recurring fees, and per-usage fees. The platform itself is PCI DSS. The picture seems a bit complete now, but it seems there is some overlap on those two key topics, service mesh and API management. API management and service mesh are sharing some common features such as rate limiting or security policies, but they are targeting different people. So the question is not should I use API management or service mesh, but how to make them work together. Let's state the joint value proposition of having API management with service mesh to solve customer challenges. It's about being able to upgrade your service communications to full features API and being able to manage them. With this, you will be able to improve the governance of your APIs by having a single location to view and manage them, foster reuse by promoting existing services, onboard more easily new developers by providing a central place to hold API documentation. And now, let's take some time to talk about the Freescale Istio adapter that ties together Istio and Freescale. The Freescale Istio adapter is a software component that integrates with the Istio mixer. Istio mixer mediates communication to and from services. It collects request or environment attributes from proxies and enforces access control and usage policies. It sends telemetry data, implements first and second level caches to reduce latencies. The Freescale adapter communicates with the Freescale Service Management APIs, authorize requests, and report usage. It complements other policies in Mixer that you would usually have in an API gateway. When a request arrives in the service mesh, Envoy generates attributes from request, response, and the environment. Mixer processes attributes and routes them to adapters according to its configuration. Adapters receive the request and handle it. Let's have a look at this flow in a sample application secured using Istio. The application is made of a product page service connected to reviews and a details service. The reviews service connected to a rating service. The requests come from the Istio ingress gateway and go through the Envoy proxies. The Envoy proxies talk to the Istio mixer component that is part of the control plane, along with Citadel and Pilot. Mixer is backed with adapters such as a Freescale Istio adapter that talks to a Freescale component, system, and backend. Enough talk, let's do some demo. So in this demo, we will deploy several services in Istio, manage service communications, and introduce a Freescale adapter to promote service communications to full-featured API. Let's start the demo by discovering the sample application. So the sample application is a bookstore to discover books available um, in the store. Um, and if we have a look at the OpenShift console, you can discover that the application is made of those four microservices. It's made of a detail, a product page, a rating, and a review service. And so far, that's the only information we can get at this stage from the OpenShift console. But if we dig a bit deeper, this application even has APIs. So far, this API is deployed in Istio and managed as any other service communication. So let's have some business intelligence by plugging an API management solution to it. Let's have a look at the observability feature of Istio. Um, so this is the Kiali console that let me discover Istio services. So let's jump in to the graph that let me discover the application are working. So as we can see, um, the main entry point for the application is the product page that talks to a detail service. It talks also to a review service that contacts a rating service. Um, By using the Kiali console, I can complete my view of the running application. Kiali is telling me that the application is made of those four services. And by selecting the product page service, um, I can inspect that service. And by selecting action and add Freescale API management rule, I can promote this service to a full-fledged API managed by Freescale. Kelly is asking me some Freescale references to complete the configuration. So let's connect to the Freescale API management portal. And create an API for this new bookstore API. So let's create a bookstore. And let's find a system name and create the API. Okay, now I can go to the integration configuration, edit the integration settings, and change the integration settings to use Istio. Okay, let's add a metric to keep track of the usage of that API. So let's define a new method, which is named get products. And add a mapping rule to restrict the available URL. So API v1 slash products. I can now create an application plan. Let's call it test. And in this application plan, I could define limits or pricing rules to restrict what consumers, API consumers, can do with my API. Okay, great. So let's fit. Where is it? Sorry. Um, no, so let's fill in that form with an handler name. So bookstore, a service ID which is 45, the system URL which can be discovered here, and an access token that I can create in that section. So let's call it Istio. Um, okay, and I can create the handler. And now that the configuration has been saved, um, my service deployed in Istio has been promoted as a full-featured API. So let's do some curl command on this API. So if I do a curl minus s, as you can see, I get a permission denied saying that I need to authenticate to access this API, which is quite different from my first request so far. So let's generate an API key so that I can query this API. So I can go in audience, in developer account, application, and create a client application. So I will use the test application plan. I'll provide a name for my application, so bookstore app. And I get an API key that I can use to query my API. It works. Let me prettify this. So basically, we just secure an API in Istio using the Freescale Istio adapter. And if I go to the analytics dashboard, I can see that my bookstore API has been used 2 times. And the most used method is the get products method. I can even publish this API to the Freescale developer portal. To do this, I need to craft an API contract for my API. I can do this with IPCurio, which is the graphical editor from Red Hat to craft that API contract. So I have my bookstore API that I designed before this session. It basically have a get product method, and I can just export this. So I need some JSON format, and I can then go to ActiveDocs in Freescale, create an ActiveDoc. I will name it bookstore um, store. I can publish it. I will paste the definition. I can create my active doc. And if I go to the developer portal, um, I can go to the documentation and discover my new API, which is there. So let's conclude on this demo. Um, the joint value proposition of having API management with Service Mesh is to solve customer challenges. Uh, it's about to be able to upgrade your service communications to full-featured APIs and being able to manage them. With this, you will be able to improve the governance of your APIs by having a single location to view and manage them. You will be able to foster reuse by promoting existing services, or onboard more easily new developers by providing a central place to hold API documentation. And I gathered some useful resources for you. So keep track of these slides, and those two links will are basically some links on blog articles that explain what we covered so far, but in greater details. So thanks for being there.